Illinois faces some big challenges. Today, we're about to hear a truly honest analysis of the problems we face. Equally as important, you'll also hear an in-depth discussion of some practical solutions. This is your radio source for stories, the insight, and the answers you won't hear anywhere else. Not on the media and not coming from Springfield. You're listening to Illinois Rising, presented by the Illinois Policy Institute. Now, here's your host, AM 560's Dan Proft.
Dan Proft, thank you for joining us on this edition of Illinois Rising. My co-host this week is Cole Lauterbach. He's a reporter for the Illinois News Network. Cole, great to have you. Yeah, excellent. It's been an interesting week in Springfield, as it always is, and Chicago. Chicago Teachers Union, not shy about new taxes they have, new ideas they have for revenue. We saw a rally in Springfield on Wednesday?
Wednesday, yeah.
That was all about revenue. You know, Ronner says cut back, we say fight back. That was the chant. Well, it's the same chant in Chicago. And the way the Chicago Teachers Union wants to fight back to, staving off bankruptcy for the city of Chicago, CPS is functionally bankrupt, junk rated, is all kinds of new taxes, reinstatement of the head tax, the corporate head tax, raise personal property lease tax, impose taxes on Uber and Lyft, increase the Chicago hotel tax, impose a commercial property tax assessment, raise the Chicago vehicle fuel tax, create new special service areas to spend on certain educational programs, which of course are taxpayer funded, redirect the $1 billion that Tiny Dancer wants to give Melody Hobson and Mr. Lucas to put his toys over at McCormick Place East.
You may have to explain Tiny Dancer.
Well, that's the mayor of Chicago. I think I've popularized that phrase now. And also, I mean, Karen Lewis has also suggested graduated state income tax, perhaps a city income tax, LaSalle Street financial tax prior to that. And this all against the backdrop of Chicago being the third-ranked city in the world, major city in the world last year in terms of the exodus of millionaires, behind only Paris and Rome. So it seems that Chicago ain't ready for reform any more than Springfield has been in the last 15 months.
No, I agree. And it's with there are all these suggestions, too. It's a wish list. This is a Christmas list. I mean, you have to look at how much of this would actually go through, and it's them just kind of yelling into the sky, trying to rage against the man.
Well, yeah, and there's a lot of former Chicago residents living in other states that are tired of being Santa Claus. For more perspective on this, we're now happy to be joined by Tanya Trish. She is the Vice President and General Counsel at the Illinois Retail Merchants Association. Tanya, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Dan.
So, Retail Merchants Association is the association you represent that you're employed by, and when you hear the proposals coming from the Chicago Teachers Union and other politicians about hotel taxes and rideshare taxes and even an expansion of the sales tax that has been proposed at the state level, how do you react, and how do your employer members react?
Well, I think that the suggestions by the Chicago Teachers Union are of major concern to the employers that we represent, and frankly should be of concern to anyone that is working or that is driving or that is generally doing business in the state, because the things that they have offered as revenue, additional revenue to close their budget gap, I think is going to hurt everyone. Specifically, they had some things that were of most concern to us, and that was bringing back the head tax in the city of Chicago, increasing the gas tax to 15 cents, and creating some sort of special service area, which is a special taxing area, which would increase property taxes, although the specified area has not been determined yet. Those are probably the three things that are of most concern to us.
And if those things came to pass, the impact on retailers in Chicago, what will we see?
Well, it's huge. I mean, I can kind of take them one by one. So the head tax, as you are probably familiar with, we had under the Daley administration for years, maybe 20 years, the head tax was in effect. And basically what that did was it it instituted a tax on an employer for every employee that they had over 50. So if you had more than 50 employees in the city of Chicago, you had to pay $4 for each employee to the city of Chicago just for having more employees than 50.
Punishing you for hiring people. That's interesting.
Absolutely, and really punishing you for growing your business. You know what I mean? So if you have 50 or less, there was no tax at all. But if you were lucky enough to be able to grow and expand and employ more people, then you were punished for that with a tax. And there is not any other jurisdiction that I am aware of that does a similar thing just for having employees. That, obviously, under the Emanuel administration, we certainly have our issues with that administration, some of the things he's done. But this was one of the very critical positive things he did was when he came in, vowed to remove this tax, which he did over a period of years. So the thought that this would come back, and especially in the employment climate that we have now, I think that the latest numbers of the employment rate for 16 to 24-year-olds in the city of Chicago is abysmal. When you talk about African-American teens, 90% of them in the city of Chicago are unemployed. And so if you want to tax employment, that's going to have a severe negative effect on all of those people who are currently unemployed, especially on the south and west sides of the city, where they are having some major issues, really due to a number of factors, but one of them is the fact that many people are not working. So I don't know how that, at the end of the day, helps the CTU when a number of the people that are, a number of the kids, the minors, the high schoolers that are out there looking for jobs and have nothing to do in the summers can't find jobs because of this financial issue with CTU.
Tanya, if this is all of this Christmas list that CTU wants to get, I mean, the expense tax and all of that, what does that do to the mentality of somebody that's looking to, say, invest in setting down roots in Chicago and joining the Retail Merchants Association?
Well, it's a completely, a complete disregard for really the mayor's attempt to attract business to the city, right? He's working very hard to get more manufacturers to come, to get more retail, and to get employers to really invest in the city and grow, especially on the south and the west sides where the growth is needed most. And if you're an employer, whether you're an entrepreneur or whether you are operating in other states and are thinking about coming to the Chicagoland area, you're going to think twice because, you're going to think, my employees, I'm going to get taxed more if I'm there versus if I go, some other place. The city of Chicago is competing for businesses not only with other parts of the state, but with other cities in the country. And businesses are very mobile, especially the fact that they can go online. And so people need to be cognizant of that when they suggest things that will really make employers think twice about whether or not they want to build their businesses here or whether they want the growth to be in the city of Chicago versus somewhere else.
Do you think a lot of people don't quite get it because we have this Potemkin Village problem in Chicago? I mean, it's kind of a good news, bad news. Everybody sees the Mag Mile. People come in from the suburbs. They experience a very small portion of the city, just a few wards in terms of restaurants and bars and entertainment districts and theater and so forth. So the city's great. It's beautiful. We got planters in the middle of the road. Everything's great. We got all these successful restaurants and retailers. And so what's the problem?
There's a lot of problems, and I think that if you're a resident of the city of Chicago, you know it all too well because so many of the people in the city of Chicago do not live in the Central Business District, do not live in River North. They live in the neighborhoods. And they are seeing increasingly, especially for those folks who live on the borders, near the borders of the city of Chicago, those businesses hopping right across the border and leaving and having a hard time retaining businesses on the city side. And, that doesn't happen for no reason. That's happening because of the number of increased regulations and taxes and just anti-business moves that have been happening in the city of Chicago really over the last couple of years, that businesses are deciding that they're going to take their business elsewhere. And everyone suffers when that happens, especially the neighborhoods. And so what you're seeing is an increase in business in Central Business District and River North, and a decrease in business growth everywhere else in the city. And that cannot stand. That can't stand long term. And so when we think about proposals such as what CTU is proposing to tax employers for simply having more than 50 employees, you have to scratch your head and think, what are they really thinking?
She is Tanya Trish, Vice President and General Counsel at the Illinois Retail Merchants Association. Tanya, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
I appreciate it. Thanks a lot.